Top 25 films of 2013. Let's get crackin'! Starting off at number 25 is The Man of Steel. This Superman film might not be as heartwarming or contain as much of a level of hope as the Christopher Reeve film series had, but it might just be the most beautiful Superman film to date. That and the level of action this film has should be enough for you to watch. So definitely check out Man of Steel. Next up on the top 25 list is The Wolverine at number 24. The last time the Wolverine had his own movie, well, let's just say the reception wasn't that great. People in the theater were probably left contemplating suicide. I personally didn't think it was that bad, but it had its faults. The Wolverine, however, reversed that. The Wolverine's very, very action-oriented and heart-pounding. Whew! Check it out. At number 23 is Thor 2, The Dark World. I wasn't that much of a fan of the first Thor. When it came down to Marvel, I had this idea of what should and shouldn't be in a Marvel film, and the first Thor film did not meet that quota. Thor 2 did. At number 22 is How I Live Now. This is probably the only movie on my list that I hadn't heard of before I watched it. And I was pleasantly surprised. It's about a girl that goes to live with her distant relatives in an English countryside when World War III begins around her, and we start to see a war movie from the outside looking in. And it's very entertaining. It's a very different perspective. It's hard to describe, but it's very cool. It's a very interesting movie. Definitely check that out if you have the time. And number 21 is Despicable Me 2. The first one is definitely better than the second one, but the second one is still really entertaining because it's Gru, it's the kids, it's the Minions. Yes, I am not that big of a fan of the Minions as many of you are. I think that they are a gimmick. I don't think they are needed as much as they think they're needed. I think they're needed on the very basic comedic level. But for storyline-wise, nah, they're not really that needed. It's still a good movie, though. It's very entertaining. You should check it out. Number 20, Anchorman 2, The Legend Continues. When it came down to the first Anchorman, I felt myself forcing laughs because I just didn't understand it. I liked the characters, but I couldn't really care about the story. Also, when it came down to Will Ferrell, I thought everybody else was funnier than him, and that was a problem for me because it was called Anchorman, and he's the Anchorman. When it came down to Anchorman 2, my gut was exploding with laughter. Number 19, The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug. This was another movie where the first one I wasn't so much of a fan of. I really liked the first Hobbit, but I didn't like it as much as, The Hobbit 2. Number 18 is Elysium. I'm probably the only person that thinks Elysium deserves to be in a top 25 spot, but it is a very entertaining sci-fi flick, and one that, unlike anything we've really seen before. No, it's not as good as District 9. But it's not supposed to be either. It's supposed to be its own thing, even though they both kind of go about the same issues. It's still its own thing. It's a very entertaining flick, and I definitely think you should watch it. Standing at number 17 is The Call. Now, I know people are probably disagreeing with me on this one. The reason why I like it so much is because it's a thrill ride, but it's very believable at the same time. And it's very tense, it's very heart-pounding, for the most part. Yes, we're a little further down the road, it kind of switches gears dramatically, but for the most part, the movie's like really great. When I was watching the movie, I would have probably put it in the higher 90 percentile. Later on, it got pushed down a little bit, but the movie is still great. Really, really great. Number 16, White House Down. There was a couple terrorist films for the White House this year. One was Olympus Has Fallen, one was White House Down. And the reason why I like White House Down better is because it was done by the same guy that did Independence Day, The Day After Tomorrow, 2012, all these action-packed films that are amazing. That might be my own thoughts, but they are really great. They're really well done. They are very visually stunning. You can't disagree with that. White House Down is not as explosive as the other ones, but it has some great characters. It's still action-packed. The sense of humor is really great as well, and the set pieces are insane. It's the real White House. It's what it is. It's because they rebuilt 60% of the White House in order to make it. And if you keep that in mind while watching, it's a very entertaining movie. Definitely watch this film. I would suggest to watch Olympus Has Fallen just to compare the two, because some people think Olympus Has Fallen is better. But as for me, it's White House Down. Number 15, This Is the End. This is the most ridiculous comedy of the year, but it's hilarious. It's one of the funniest movies of the year. I know some people that would rate it as the funniest movie of the year. I don't personally, but it's definitely up there. Seth Rogen, James Franco, together they just match. And the movie itself is hilarious. It's one of the few ensemble comedies that I actually enjoyed. Number 14, Pacific Rim. This is a movie I wasn't expecting much out of. It just looked like robots versus monsters, ooh-wee. But what it turned out to be is a movie that says hello to your inner child. You know when you're a kid and you're playing with those toys and you're in your own world because you don't see toys in front of you. You see an entire magical world. And Pacific Rim was pretty much that world that you remember. Somebody had an inner child when they were making Pacific Rim. And Pacific Rim is a very exciting movie. It's just really fun. And the music's awesome. Number 13 is The Last Stand. Arnie is back in action. Can I get an amen? Amen. Yes, he's been in other things since, like The Escape Plan, but I haven't seen that. I can't compare the two. After The Expendables 2, this was his own movie. And it was awesome. It was awesome to see him back in action, blowing people apart, and being vulnerable at the same time. The movie's kind of silly. Yeah, but when it comes down to nostalgia, it definitely appeals. And number 12 is Oblivion. You know, a lot of people were comparing this to, say, After Earth, because it was both sci-fi and a post-apocalyptic Earth, la 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 la. I don't care. A lot of movies fit that same exact description. This movie is more comparable to, say, oh, I don't know, Moon. But at the same time, this is a very fantastic sci-fi film, starring Tom Cruise, that just throws twists and turns at you while throwing action and suspense all the way through. Definitely worth a check. Out. Number 11, Iron Man 3. While other people were growing tired of Iron Man, I wasn't. He's one of Marvel's most profitable characters, and they really did need the trilogy because it finishes off a story that it needed to tell in order for Avengers 2, perchance, to happen. Iron Man 3, it kind of goes overboard on a few different elements, and I was a little disappointed. I felt that it was too easy in the end. but it is still a very entertaining and fun movie, just in general. And they changed things up in terms of villains, and I couldn't really be happier on one level, so I have to put this in number 11. On number 10, the incredible Burt Wonderstone. Now I know you disagree with me on this one, and that's okay. This is more of a personal choice for me, because Steve Carell and Jim Carrey are like my heroes. Have been since I was a young kid. It's the people I wanted to grow up to be. And I found the movie hilarious. I couldn't stop laughing in the theater, and I know I was probably the only one, and that's okay. I understand where you're coming from. If you don't like it, I completely understand and agree with some of the things you say. But Jim Carrey, Steve Carell, I will watch them in anything. And I can't say that for every actor out there. So, if you're the same, definitely check this movie out. Number 9, World War Z. Yeah, this had a Pepsi commercial in there. But who cares? I know that everybody is complaining about it, but I don't know why. When they should be watching for the movie itself. The movie itself is very entertaining. Yeah, it went through some production problems, but it finally came out, and once I saw it, my mouth was on the ground. I loved it. It was a zombie movie that unlike we've seen before. The action's insane. Brad Pitt in the movies is great. I don't know why everyone's complaining. It's a very entertaining movie that you should definitely watch if you have the time. So definitely check it out. I can't wait for the sequel. Number 8, What Maisie Knew. I do love dramas, but they don't always end up in my top 25 list. They're just great on their own, but this one definitely deserves to be on the top 25 list because it's about a young girl that's experiencing divorce through the innocence of a child's eyes, and it's very realistic, very believable, and I don't know, it's definitely worth a look if you have the time. Number 7, Star Trek Into Darkness. I can't remember what I was going to say. Now, I wouldn't say that Star Trek Into Darkness is as good as the 2009 J.J. Abrams Star Trek film, but it is definitely very, very action-filled and entertaining. It is kind of a copy off of The Wrath of Khan, but that shouldn't matter since The Wrath of Khan was done so many years ago. They make remakes all the time, and Into Darkness can be seen almost like a remake, and respectfully so. Into Darkness is a very entertaining and fantastic movie that you should definitely watch. I personally am a fan of the newer Star Trek films above the rest of the Star Trek movies. Now, the classic Star Trek films have their own positives to them. I really like the old movies to a degree, but nothing touches the J.J. movies. I'm sorry. Number 6, The Place Beyond the Pines. Now, this is the second drama that shows up in my 25 list. And it's one that I wasn't even sure I wanted to see before I watched it. Having watched it, I'm very glad that I did, because it is an excellent drama. It takes place in 3 different acts, following this guy's life around it, his life, his legacy, all this. And Ryan Gosling is wonderful in this film. Very great, very, very, very great, very, very, very great, very. Number 5, Frozen. Why is a kid's animated film on my top 5 for the year? Well, probably because it's an astonishing film. No, not all the music is as great as some of the other Disney movies like it out there, but the story is awesome. It's a very captivating story, and it fits very well with the winter season, and it's probably one that they're going to promote year after year after year because it's such a wonderful film. There is one song in it that's amazing. The rest of them are just so-so. But it's definitely a movie that you should check out. Number 4, The World's End. Now this is the second end of the world comedy that I have on my list. And I have it so much higher because it's part of the Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy that Simon Pegg has out now. And this is my favorite of the trilogy. It's hard to really say much about the movie because it's just these guys going around drinking and with the world going haywire around them. That's pretty much what it is, but it's hilarious. The jokes are fresh. It's hard to explain. It's an awesome movie. Definitely, like I've said for all the other movies, definitely check it out. Number 3, Gravity. While everybody else probably has this at number 1, I don't. I still think it's a very excellent film. But I didn't think it was perfect. I thought that there was more that it could have done. There was stuff I was expecting to see that I didn't see. I didn't see it as perfect, but it was still a wonderful film that you should watch. Number 2, Odd Thomas. Now, Odd Thomas is one of my favorite books that I've ever read. I've probably read it like 10, 12 times. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. Dean Koontz himself usually hates his film adaptations because they're not perfect. And I'm always worried for the same reason whenever I really enjoy a book, like Odd Thomas. Like, I didn't like the Da Vinci Code for several reasons because it just couldn't match what the book was. So I was worried about Odd Thomas because this was one of my favorite books. The movie is insane. It's perfect. I have no idea how they did it, but they did it perfectly. While you're reading the book, if you're like me, you'll visualize it. You'll visualize every scene, every character, every angle of the camera if it were a movie. You visualize the entire thing. And Odd Thomas, the movie, somehow took those visuals that you had and recreated them for real. Everything that you visualized in the book is right there displayed for you on the film. And I thought that was phenomenal. My jaw was on the ground. Others might disagree with me on that one. But if you're a fan of the book, at least as much as I am, don't miss this movie. Some people don't even know it exists, which is a shame. Look it up, find it, watch it. And for the number 1 movie of the year, The Hunger Games: Catching Fire. Yeah, this is another movie that many of you probably aren't going to agree with me on. But I love the first Hunger Games. It was in the higher 90s. I think I rated it 96%. And I didn't think that the second movie could do all that much better. I mean, first of all, it was a second movie, which means that it's the middleman. It's trying to get to a bigger story that finishes everything up. So the second movie can't be all that great, right? Most sequels aren't all that great. But I watched it and I didn't even realize that the movie was long. I was sitting there with this face the entire movie. It just kept throwing twists and turns my way. I didn't think this would happen, then it did. I didn't think this would happen, then it did. I thought this would happen, which would make it worse, but that didn't happen. Every which way, every single turn was a good one. The Hunger Games, in my opinion, is the best movie of the year. And it is my 4th 100% perfect score out of almost 800 reviews. So, you should definitely, like I've said for probably every single review, you should definitely check this movie out if you haven't already. And even if you have, watch it again. Watch it again because it is fantastic. It is fantastic. That's it.